All right, so let's say you go through the first 7 steps of a trigonometry problem and then you get all the way to step 8. And step 8 is going to be to solve a trigonomic problem. Let's put that. Step 8, solve your trig problem. Right? So when we come to step 8, we will already have a trigonomic function for us to focus on, okay? And for our purposes today, we're only gonna focus on a missing side. I'll make another video for how we will go ahead and solve for a missing angle. But for now, let's say we did all of our trigonomic steps, 1 through 7, and we ended up with this trigonomic function. The cosine of 54 degrees is going to be equal to x over 25. Okay, let's say you have a triangle, you complete the steps, and this is where you end up. And now you have to solve for it. So this may look like a more confusing problem for us to solve on a calculator, but it's actually a pretty simple thing for us to do. Think about what we're needing to do here. We are having the variable x, right? Here's our variable x, and we need to solve for it. And one of the things we know back from algebra is that if you want to solve for a variable, you need to get that variable all by itself, right? Currently, x is being divided by the number 25. Now, the opposite operation of division is multiplication. So if I want to get 25 away from x, instead of dividing x by 25, I'm going to multiply both sides by 25. Times 25 and times 25. Please remember that this is a form of balancing an equation. So whatever you do from one side, you have to do the other to keep the values consistent, okay? By multiplying by 25, we're effectively canceling out the dividing by 25 underneath of our x, and essentially moving it to the opposite side. So now what we're left with is 25 times the cosine of 54 degrees is equal to x. And now that we have our variable x here all by itself, right, it's totally standalone, what we have is our problem that we need to enter into our calculator. We need to type in 25 times the cosine of 54 into our calculator, and that will tell us the value of x. So let's do that. Calculator up at the top. I'm going to type in 25 times, go to your function tab, function, cosine, back to main, 54. All right, and what we know now is that 25 times the cosine of 54 is 14.69. We don't want it there because it makes it negative, so 14.694. So x is equal to 14.69463, on and on, right? We like to round to the nearest hundredth, tenth, hundredth. 4 is not enough to make 9 round up, so 14.69 or 14 and 69 hundredths would be our value for x. Okay, so these are the steps that we would take if our variable was in the numerator. But let's talk about what if our variable's in the denominator. So let's look at a sine problem. Let's say the sine of 12 degrees, come on now, is going to be equal to 14 over m. Now looking at this, the only thing that's different, first, different values, right? 12 and 14 and a sine instead of a cosine. But the main difference I want you to focus on is that the variable is now in the denominator. Again, remember that the key is for us to get the variable all by itself. So right now, 14 is being divided by m. So what we're going to do is get m out from underneath 14 by doing its opposite operation, right? Instead of dividing by m, we're going to multiply by m to both sides, okay? That makes these variables cancel each other out, and what you're left with is m times the sine of 12 degrees is equal to 14. This is essentially exactly what we did in the last problem. The main difference is our variable m is still not yet all by itself. Now, instead of 14 divided by m, right, m being a dividend, I hope that's right, m is now being multiplied by something. So we still need to get m by itself. And right now, m is being multiplied by the sine of 12 degrees. Just like we did over here, the opposite operation of division was multiplication. The opposite operation of multiplication is division. So we will divide this whole side by the sine of 12 degrees and divide the other side of the equation as well. We need to balance that out. Okay, again, dividing sine of 12 degrees by sine of 12 degrees causes it to be 1, which m times 1 is just m, okay, is equal to 14 divided by the sine of 12 degrees, okay? So if you take a look at our original problem, sine of 12 degrees is equal to 14 divided by m, and then you take a look at what we ended up with, what you'll notice is that sine of 12 degrees and the variable m have essentially just flip-flopped, okay? The sine of 12 degrees and the variable m have just flip-flopped. They have changed positions because we initially divided or multiplied by m to both sides, and then that causing it to go to the left-hand side of our equation, and then divided both sides by sine of 12 degrees, causing it to go to the right hand of our equation, okay? So maybe you can draw a connection there that all of these steps in the middle, okay, are essentially to get your trigonomic function and your variable to switch sides. Now that we have that, we can go to our calculator, and we know that m is going to equal 14, let's try that again, 14 divided by function, the sine of 12 degrees, which is going to equal 67.3, the 6 makes it round up, 67.4, and that would be your answer.